Today's story is a mysterious and unique one. An unknown force wiped out the entire human population in a single night, leaving the world in complete silence. Cities stand abandoned, streets are empty, and not a soul remains, except for one man, Del. Del is no saint. He carries the weight of his sins. Yet for reasons beyond understanding, he survived when the rest of humanity vanished. Now he drifts through the ruins of civilization, following a routine that keeps him going. He sleeps in an old library, treating it as his home, sweeping the dust from its shelves and caring for the books as if someone might still come to read them. Every day he scavenges for food, searching through deserted malls. When nothing is left, he turns to nature, catching fish to keep himself alive. But survival is just a task, one he carries out without purpose. To fill the empty hours, he moves from house to house, cleaning each one. He collects photographs and albums, preserving the memories of people who no longer exist. As a quiet tribute, Del marks each cleaned home with a cross. It gives him direction, a sense of order, though deep down he knows it changes nothing. Time has lost its meaning, and in this world where money, power, and ambition no longer matter, he often wonders, what is the point of being the last man alive? Perhaps it would have been easier to disappear along with everyone else, but something else is waiting for Del. As Del continues his daily routine, he eventually stumbles upon a lifeless body. Rather than leaving it to decay, he chooses to bury it, offering a final act of dignity to the departed. Afterward, he returns home, settles onto his worn-out sofa, and watches TV. Another night in his isolated world. This is how his life unfolds, day after day. Would you want to live like this? If so, let us know in the comments. But just when it seems like nothing will ever change, an unexpected event shakes up Del's monotonous existence. As he prepares to sleep, something unusual catches his eye. Flashes of light flickering in the night sky. Fireworks? No, they could be flares. His heart pounds at the thought, could someone else still be alive? Unable to shake his curiosity, he stays awake all night, his mind racing with possibilities. The moment daylight breaks, he rushes toward the area where he saw the lights. As he gets closer, he discovers the wreckage of a crashed car. Approaching cautiously, he peers inside and finds an unconscious woman. She appears battered and weak, but in her possession are the very firecrackers he saw the night before. However, that's not all. She also has a gun. The sight of it makes Del tense up, but after a moment's hesitation, he pushes his fear aside. He lifts the woman into his arms and carries her home, carefully tending to her wounds. When Grace regained consciousness, she took a moment to carefully observe her surroundings. It didn't take long for her to realize that she was in a stranger's house. Panic set in as she quickly got up and rushed to the door, only to find it locked. She pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The door had been locked by Del himself, his way of ensuring his own security. He had survived alone for years, and he wasn't about to take any risks now. But the questions in his mind were far greater than his concern for security. Who was Grace? What was she doing here? And most importantly, how had she survived when the rest of the world had perished? He refused to open the door until he got his answers. Sitting across from her, he asked his first question. This is the first time in years that I've seen another human, especially a woman. So tell me, how did you survive? Grace, still shaken, looked at him and sighed. I don't know, she admitted. My family and I had come to America for a vacation. But one morning I woke up and everyone was gone. The streets were empty, the city was silent. I searched for my parents, but there was no trace of them or anyone else. I have no idea where they went. Del watched her closely, trying to gauge if she was telling the truth. Then he asked about something else that had been bothering him. The gun. Where did you get it? Grace hesitated for a moment before answering. I found it last night. It was just lying there, so I took it for my own safety. I haven't used it on anyone, I swear. After listening to her responses, Del finally unlocked the door and let her out, but he had no intention of keeping her with him. Survival had been easier alone, and he saw no reason to change that. Instead, he handed her the keys to a nearby house and even gave her a car, ensuring she wouldn't struggle. He, on the other hand, decided to move to another house, but Grace wasn't ready to be alone again. The thought of spending her days in silence with no one to talk to terrified her. She needed companionship, even if Del didn't think he did. Can I stay with you? She asked, her voice hopeful. Del didn't even hesitate. No, but Grace was determined. She followed him around, trying every argument she could think of. I can cook for you, she offered. We can clean together. We can even try going to another town. There is no other town, Del cut her off. His voice was firm, his patience thinning. Why don't you understand? There's nothing left. No people, no civilization, just emptiness. So stay where I told you or leave. I can't do anything more for you. But Grace wasn't giving up that easily. She kept following him, insisting on staying by his side. She even tagged along when he went to the market, much to Dell's frustration. Though he was irritated by her persistence, he didn't say much. When it was time to eat, Dell set his plate down and glanced at Grace. Without hesitation, he pointed to another table. "Go eat over there. I always eat alone." Grace paused, her expression shifting from surprise to disappointment. "What kind of person are you?" she asked, shaking her head. "Everyone wants companionship, but you seem to run from it." Dell sighed, his patience wearing thin. "This is nothing new for me," he said, his voice slightly raised. "I was alone before all of this happened, and I'm still alone now. That's just how it is. No one ever loved me then, and no one loves me now. So do yourself a favor. Stay away from me. I don't need you around." His words cut deep. Grace stared at him for a moment, her eyes reflecting hurt. Without another word, she turned and walked out. Moments later, she got into the car, ready to leave for good. But as she was about to drive away, Dell appeared beside the car. He hesitated, then sighed. "I'm sorry," he admitted, his voice softer this time. He had spoken out of frustration, but he hadn't meant to push her away. Grace looked at him for a moment before giving a small smile. "Fine," she said, "but you better not be this grumpy all the time." From that moment on, things began to change. Dell, who had lived in complete isolation for so long, found himself sharing his routine with someone else. Grace started helping him, cleaning houses, gathering food, and keeping track of supplies. Time passed, and without realizing it, Dell had softened. He no longer rushed away after burying the dead. Instead, he lingered, offering a quiet prayer, something Grace had encouraged him to do. Slowly, her influence began to reshape his habits. There were still moments that tested his patience. Grace blasted loud music in the car, talked endlessly about things that didn't matter, and filled the silence he once cherished. But for some reason, it no longer irritated him as much as it used to. For the first time in years, Dell wasn't just surviving, he was living. One day while cleaning, Grace stumbles upon a room filled with photographs, pictures Dell had collected from the abandoned houses he had visited. She wonders why he keeps them, but perhaps only someone who has spent their entire life in solitude like Dell can truly understand the weight of loneliness. Another day, while riding her bicycle far from their usual area, Grace reaches a place that appears even more devastated. As she explores, she hears noises coming from a house. At first, fear grips her, but she gathers her courage and steps inside, only to find a stray dog, likely a former pet now left alone, just like them. Feeling sorry for him, she brings him back to the library. Dell sees the dog but doesn't react, simply accepting its presence. Grace struggles to come up with a name, and when nothing seems right, she simply calls him Dog. Over time, Dell grows more comfortable with Grace's company, and his once distant demeanor softens. One evening, as they sit together for dinner, Dell listens as Grace shares childhood stories, like the time she had 2 fish she adored, only for her cat to eat them both. As the conversation flows, everything seems normal. But then, for the first time, something unusual happens. A strange mark on Grace's neck catches her attention. She tries to show Dell, but before she can, a sudden noise interrupts them. Rushing outside, they find the dog tearing through Dell's collection of books. Dell tries to stop him, but in the struggle, the dog bites his hand. Grace quickly tends to his wound, carefully bandaging and stitching it. The next morning, Grace and Dell wake up to find the dog missing. This was strange. After all, the house had been locked from all sides. Where could he have gone? Confused and worried, they step outside and search the surrounding area, calling out for him. But no matter where they look, the dog is nowhere to be found. Something about this feels off to Grace. Suspicion creeps into her mind, and she turns to Dell. "Did you do something?" she asks, her voice sharp with doubt. Dell sighs, barely affected by her tone. "I let him out to do his business," he replies casually. "Maybe he ran off." His indifference infuriates Grace. She glares at him, feeling an unfamiliar frustration build up inside her. Without another word, she marches back inside, grabs the collection of photographs Dell had taken from the abandoned houses, and lays them out in front of him. "If you don't care about anyone," she demands, "then why do you keep these? What's the point? You might as well just give up and die." Dell looks at the photos, the weight of her words settling over him. After a long silence, he finally speaks. "I wasn't always like this," he admits, his voice low. "I wasn't always alone, but something happened, something that changed everything." He doesn't say more. Instead, he turns and heads to bed, leaving Grace with more questions than answers. That night, Dell wrestles with his own thoughts, regret gnawing at him. He knows he's been pushing her away, shutting himself off, and maybe it's time to change. The next morning, he decides to take a step forward. For the first time, he gives Grace responsibilities. She is now in charge of cleaning the house on her own. and he entrusts her with taking care of the small greenery farm he had been maintaining. Grace is surprised but happy. She sees a shift in Dell, a change she hadn't expected. And slowly, for the first time in years, he starts seeing her not as a burden, but as a part of his family. As time passed, Grace took on more responsibilities, cleaning the abandoned houses on her own. One day she stumbled upon a house that wasn't on the map. Curious, she stepped inside, but before she could explore further, Dell came running, his face filled with urgency. "Get out of here," he ordered. "We don't need to clean this house." Grace hesitated. Why was this place different? Then it hit her. This was Dell's own home. He had avoided it all this time because inside lay the remains of his parents, a past he wasn't ready to face. "You have to do this," Grace urged. "If you don't give them a proper burial, their souls won't find peace. You'll carry this weight forever." Dell felt his chest tighten, but deep down he knew she was right. With great difficulty, he finally gathered the courage to bury his parents. The moment was overwhelming. He sat by their graves, crying for hours, something he never would have done alone. But Grace was there, offering silent support. Later, she gently took him to another house, making sure he rested. The next morning, a strange noise woke him. Grabbing his gun, he rushed outside, only to find Grace sitting with 3 unknown people. She introduced them as her parents, but something about their behavior felt off. Then one of them, Patrick, turned to Dell. "You should come with us to California," he said. "There's a society there, survivors like us." Dell's expression darkened. Without a word, he turned and walked away, anger simmering beneath the surface. Grace ran after him. "They're not my real parents," she admitted, "but they took care of me." Still, Dell wouldn't listen. He stormed back to the library, shutting himself away. But Patrick wasn't done. He found Dell again, handing him a book with an address inside. "If you ever change your mind, you know where to find us." Meanwhile, another woman, Carolina, was ready to take Grace with them. Grace refused, but they didn't give her a choice. As they took her away, she sobbed, her heart breaking as she left the place she had come to call home. She never looked back. Days passed after Grace's departure, and Dell found himself drowning in loneliness. Once, solitude had been his refuge, but now the emptiness gnawed at him. Frustrated, he often lashed out, throwing books in anger, until he stumbled upon the one containing Patrick's address. Realizing he could no longer stay behind, he made up his mind. He was going to California. Packing his belongings, he set off, switching cars along the way to conserve fuel and keep moving. As he traveled, the full extent of the devastation became clear. Abandoned cars, lifeless bodies, remnants of those who had tried to escape but never made it. Eventually, he arrived at Grace's supposed home. What he saw inside shocked him. Grace was unconscious, hooked up to a ventilator. Her so-called family was erasing her memories, wiping away every trace of her past, including the destruction. This was not just happening to her. The entire town had undergone the same process, choosing to forget and start anew. Refusing to let her become another mindless survivor, Dell removed her mask, stopping the machine. Some memories remained, including those of him. As her consciousness returned, she recognized him and pleaded, "Take me away from here." Before they could escape, Patrick confronted them, insisting that this was the only way to survive. But Grace refused to accept his version of life and shot him without hesitation. Carolina, Patrick's wife, arrived moments later. However, instead of reacting with grief, she simply acknowledged his death. "It doesn't matter," she admitted. "I have a daughter too, just like Grace, and she doesn't remember anything either." Without another word, she walked away, detached from the reality of what had just happened. Outside, the world seemed normal. People walking, working, driving. Yet none of them remembered the past. They had chosen to live in ignorance, erasing their pain along with their history. But Dell and Grace couldn't do the same. They refused to live in a lie. No matter how painful the truth was, they chose to face it. What do you think? Were they right to hold on to their memories, or should they have erased everything like the others? Let us know in the comments. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.